culture was really fun over there. I feel like a lot of them were really shy and just like didn't say a lot. They were also really polite. And I noticed that in like the stores or whatever, like the cashiers or whoever it was, they would always talk to you in the nicest voice they could possibly have, and they would smile and like use 1,000 twists of polite words and like please and thank you and other stuff like that. So super polite. A funny thing about their politeness was that it was polite to not be straightforward when you were speaking to someone. So usually they'd beat around the bush for like half of the conversation and then finally be like, so would it not be better if we did this? So that was another thing. They'd use a lot of, I don't know what they're called, whether it be double negatives or other similar stuff that they'd usually, instead of saying, should we do this? Or can we do this or that or the other? It's like, should we not do this or can we not do that? Or just like very like kind of beat around the bush way of doing things. Another funny thing about their culture is bowing. Every time we went to a door, I think we'd bow right off the bat, be like, oh, hello, we're missionaries, we're teaching about Christ, we have this message, will you listen, or something like that, and then whatever they said when it was time to go would usually be like, oh, thank you, I'm sorry we were rude, love to see you again sometime, please be safe, don't do anything stupid, and then just like bow like 10 times and every time you bow you take a step back and like try to like sneak away, and then like some of them, I don't know, you have to bow like, you try to copy the other person. So sometimes we didn't know what to do when like one of the older ladies like got down on their knees and like went all the way to the floor. We were just like, just like faked it as best we could. But that was definitely a fun part of their culture, was bowing. My very last area, I was next to a military base with tons of Americans. So I went to an American ward that had like 250 people sometimes, and just constantly working with Americans. But it was really hard not to bow to the Americans when you shook their hands, or it's hard to look people in the eyes because the Japanese people always kept their eyes down when they bowed or shook hands or stuff like that. And it was also hard to greet the Americans in English because we were just used to like greeting in Japanese or asking people how they were doing, or it was weird hearing people greet us in English and all sorts of stuff like that. So that is definitely a really big part of the culture, was just all the bowing and polite speaking around, beating around the bush and stuff like that. Well, like I said earlier, they definitely really value like family and respect and stuff, and cultural do's and don'ts. Got to be really careful in the language that you use, because their language is kind of interesting because the words you use show kind of what type of person you're talking to. So if you use the wrong words, you could be saying, you could be talking down to someone on accident. So there's certain words that you would never use, like if you were talking to an older lady or something like that. And it's not that they're impolite words, it's just that like they're meant for talking to kids or from talking, or to talking to like, to talk to your friends or stuff like that. Whenever we would eat, I'd always say a word kind of to thank whoever made it and also to like, I don't know, show respect. We would always say itadakimasu before we eat. And so that was a do. If you didn't do that when you were eating at a member's house or something like that, they'd probably think it was kind of rude. I don't know if it was a don't, but whenever someone would sneeze, nobody would say anything. I think I don't know, like in America you'd say bless you or something like that, but they seemed to be really embarrassed when they sneezed, so just didn't say anything.